Peak week is the week of every bodybuilder's dreams.
Oh, it's the if I think about the many ways you can describe the feeling of peak week, it's a roller coaster, and we're gonna go through that roller coaster today on all aspects of peaking.
It's just going to be awesome, isn't it? Because it's when you first get into competing, when you hear about peak week, you talk about peak week with your coach when you're going to do it for the first time. It's like, this doesn't seem real. Like, I'm going to have carbs. I'm going to,
And a lot
slowly,
of them.
slowly taper down, your training, and then you're fueling up as well at the same time. So you're contemplating, am I going to have more energy?
Yeah.
The mental alertness slightly picks up. It doesn't maybe pick up as much as you think it would.
Yeah.
And it's just that phenomenal change in your physique, especially those last 3 days of peak week going into the show. It's like, what is happening to me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many different ways to peak, and people have all these kind of different ideas around what peak week is and what the best way is to do it, and everyone has their own kind of approach. I'd love to hear yours, Sarah. I've always taken the usually around a 3-day deplete into a carb load, and come out the other end just a crazy fuller package than when I went in.
And I've tried
flat, you end up popping.
Yeah, and probably the same as you. I've tried different ways to do it. So I've either eked up the carbs, or I've gone high on the carbs and then slowly tapered it down, but a lot higher than obviously prep macros.
Yeah.
And I definitely prefer the increase in carbs, and then the night before assessing where you're at, and then potentially maybe dropping it down a bit.
Playing with it if you need to. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it's even when I think about what goes into peak week, and it's those AM and PM progress photos you put to your coach. It's you're literally at points hanging out your arse.
Yeah.
And you've got to have all your meals, and then sort of 9 PM and you've got to put your bikini on, put your heels on, and do your photos and send them over to your coach. Then you're sitting by your phone thinking, what's he or she going to say? Do I look all right? Do I get more carbs tomorrow? Do my carbs go down? And it's like this. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's an amazing thing. And I mean, I suppose one good way of kind of entering into this is taking the listener through our experiences of a peak week, and what that looks like. And it's absolutely that, you've done all the hard work and you kind of come to this week, and there's almost like this unspoken magic around peak week and what it's going to do to transform and make that final whole, hard work and everything you've done come together into the perfect package that you're just going to pop on stage. And I suppose what goes along with it is quite a lot of science and meticulous planning and thinking about, okay, well, you've taken your body to a low enough body fat percentage prior to the peak week to allow the peak, which we're going to talk about, to actually work. Because no amount of peaking, and a lot of coaches will talk about this, but no amount of peaking will work if you haven't got the body fat off in the first place.
and also you got to get completely depleted. You pretty much are literally hanging in there, aren't you?
That's it. Yeah, you need to be at a perfect point of low body fat percentage for your specific class, of course, depending on what it is. And then you're going into a further deplete few days where you're depleting the body of glycogen. You're depleting the stores so that the body is ready to absorb the glycogen and fill you up like a sponge. And in amongst that, how do we deplete? We have to obviously reduce the carbohydrates and do a series of what we call pump up workouts or depletion circuit workouts to try and get all of that glycogen out of the muscle, so you appear really flat and kind of stringy and you look just so small.
I always say I feel like a bag of shit.
Yeah, probably the point where you look the worst you might think you are ever going to look.
Yeah. And it's that mind warp, isn't it? Because I guess my first peak week, the biggest struggle I had was accepting that I was allowed carbs.
Yeah.
I'd got, you get to that point, like we spoke in the last pod, where when you see your body fat coming down, you're like, okay, I've got this. I like this.
Yeah.
And then you're so used to being hungry, being focused. And then suddenly it's like, you know, you could be going from 100 grams of carbs a day to like 300. And you're like, what do I do with that? Like,
Yeah.
what even are carbs anymore? And then it's like, you start eating them and your training's potentially filtering out a little bit, you know, you reduce your leg training and stuff like that if you go to the show, and then psychologically it's like, but I'm not training as much and I'm eating more, and it's that mind what, because you've got prep brain as well, of course.
Yeah, that's totally it. I think, you know, when you're told that in your peak week, you're maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're going to taper off your workouts, and then, you know, your Thursday, Friday, you're sitting with your feet up and not doing much and just letting the body absorb the, you know, what your carbohydrate intake and eating proper food. You do have that like, oh my God, I've never even eaten as much as this and I'm not doing anything. Oh, what am I going to look like, you know, on stage? But there is a method in the madness.
Yeah. So when last time we spoke, I remember you saying about you were self-taught for your first prep, were you, or self-coach?
Yeah.
So how did you enter a peak week then? How did you work that out?
Well, I mean, I have to admit, like, if I think back to my very first bodybuilding show, again, I make myself sound like a dinosaur on these, and I'm not. But again, you know, like at that time, this is 2012, guys. Yeah, I'm 34. So yeah, 2012. It was like I was around people who were bodybuilders, you know, so I was listening and picking brains and talking things through, and I had the understanding of things. I think actually my very, very first peak week wasn't really so much a carb deplete and a carb load, you know, with the in-depth kind of science that I put my peak weeks through now. It was have a low calorie day for 2, 3, 4 days, and then a day or two before the show, just increase things a wee bit. That was kind of it. Yeah, there wasn't really any more to it. And I have to say this kind of at this point, you know, as a first timer, and particularly in female classes, and particularly in some of the lower muscular classes, you don't need to manipulate things too much. Like, it's not going to be the same principle like a figure or a physique athlete is going to take, because you just don't need to manipulate your salts, your water, your carbs as much as you would to get that hard, crazy, muscular look. You're looking for just if you're already tight and you're already low body fat, you're just looking for a slightly tighter, more poppy version of that, and that comes
a bit fuller.
A bit fuller. And it's probably important to use those terms here and get people understanding what flat and full means, because it's really important in that peak week.
Yeah, and it's definitely, like you say there, I hoped we'd get onto that subject of the different categories as a female competitor, because I definitely see it a lot where people think that they need this massive carb up doing bikini, when actually you need to be holding your tightness, but you just need, like we say, to be a bit fuller and look a bit healthier, you know, have that almost radiant look to you. And also having the carbohydrates, like I sort of said earlier, it's the mental alertness that you start to get a bit more of those energies back, because in essence you're gonna perform.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for bikini girls, it is that as well. It's not just a case of you need to fill your muscles out and bulk out.
Yeah, you need to be alert and ready to actually present yourself correctly.
Yeah, and take on show day.
Yeah, exactly.
My first peak, I guess because I've done every peak with Stephen, I've got so many in the bank now. The first couple of seasons where I wasn't as successful as I guess wanted to be, and it was just a case of really for me competing, getting time on stage, doing things like peak week and understanding what that looks like. the main things that I have continued through, from amateur all the way up to pro, is trying to structure that peak week so there's minimal stress for a
Yeah,
start.
great point. Yeah.
That's probably my biggest thing that I focus on. So I clear the calendar that week, and if I can take a week off work as well, I'll do that. I take out dairy and I take out sugar-free foods. And I don't really have gluten anyway, but I would opt for gluten-free things in peak week. And those three things are purely because I want as minimal, digestion, inflammation, any problems like that. I want to, rule that out.
Yeah.
Stephen's always said you can do that if you want to. And I've always done it because I've wanted to bring in my best that I can. And I also avoid, any foods that would potentially cause me any distress, or in essence, you don't want any swelling or problems around your stomach, and you don't want to feel lethargic in an ideal world. And I guess that sort of, when I first had a peak week, that contributed to me feeling quite confused as to what foods I should get my carbs from.
Okay.
So at first I'd think I've got all these carbs, and suddenly I'd feel really excited, but my fats and protein would remain the same.
Yeah.
So I'd suddenly be thinking, but how can I get my carbs up without my fat and protein going up? And actually, I think there's that common misconception where people think going up on the carbs, it's suddenly that you can have all the macros, but it's not. It's your jam, your rice, potatoes. It's plain carbohydrates and your normal protein and fats.
Yeah, exactly.
So actually, it's not as exciting, I suppose, as I'd first thought. I thought, oh, I'm gonna have all this food, and then it was like, oh, I get loads of rice and potato.
So I take it in your first approach, you took a macro-based approach to your peak week as well.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Because I've done the flip reverse, where I've had set foods, set plan, and can't have any choice, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I think when I look back, I probably could have done with potentially a food plan, because I flexible diet, and like we've touched on before, coming from disordered eating and what have you, and coming into the sport, Stephen's always tried to endorse that because of my mental health, having that flexibility. But actually going into peak week, I was so overwhelmed for the first few seasons that it became very stressful, and competing for the first time and everything else that surrounds that. So actually now when I go into a peak week, and for my last few seasons, I would put myself on a food plan, but using the flexible dieting way of tracking it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's much better. And actually I like peak week a lot more because I know what I need to do. But if you're flexible dieting and your coach says, here's your macros, you're literally like, what does this look like?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think from a just kind of if I take a kind of coaching point of view, you again, it comes back to that eliminating as much stress as possible in the peak week. And if I have such a systematic approach to my clients' peak week, I tell them when they're going to have their meal, what they're having, what goes along with it in terms of water intake, what goes along it if there's any supplementation, vitamin C, B, whatever, depending on the classes, etc. And then it's literally like, right, you're getting up at this time, meal one's in, meal two's in, meal three's in, meal four's in. And I just got this process that I know works.
Yeah.
If I've got that person to where they need to be, which I'll be damned if I don't. So
that's the difficulty as well, isn't it? You some of the things that you learn in peak week, and that's why staying with a coach for a number of years is so awesome.
It is,
because you don't know who you try, do you?
And Stephen will have learned your body, and you'll have this working process, and that's really, people forget this, that relationship is where the magic happens. Like, I know we've spoken about on our other episodes, but in essence, everyone is going to be doing the same sorts of things to get to the stage, but it's how your relationship is built in order to get the result, because what one person's approach might not work for you and another person's will. And it's finding that good connection with the coach that you understand, and the coach is explaining to you why you're doing what you're doing at certain points. And this is huge when it comes to peak week, because peak week, as we've just said, it's a bit of a mind game. And if you've never done it before, and obviously me and you, Sarah, we've now had the benefit of being through quite a few, but if you've never done it before, the transition of the religious kind of monotony of the weeks and weeks and weeks you've done with a set thing, and then suddenly that one week goes completely a different direction. It can really stress you out. And then if stress goes up, cortisol goes up. And a lot of people and a lot of coaches, and I've listened to hundreds of podcasts talk about this, cortisol and stress can ruin your physique on stage if you haven't got that under control. So that's another thing as well. And having a clear structure going into that week and knowing what to expect is going to be paramount for keeping you on a nice, calm, even keel.
Yeah, because also I find that in relation to the stress management, sleep, recovery, it's all a priority. You know, I'll end up doing, you know, bits of yoga throughout every day in peak week pretty much. I'll just, partly because my energy levels are lower, you know, after a prep, and I'm feeling like I need more mindfulness and more time to just pace myself. I just get on the floor and do 10 minutes of yoga, then, you know, have a meal, really reduce the stress. You almost want to float through peak week. And then it always amazes me, I don't know about you, but the day before a show when you go for the tan, I always go with my hood up, my black trousers on and my flip-flops, and no makeup, nothing. And I just keep my head down. I have my headphones in because I'm just at that level where I'm very internal at that point. And you look around and you even see girls with their show bikinis on the night before in the car park. And I'm thinking, why are you using your energy for a tan? But it's all those little things that, you know, I just go and I'm internalized. I have my tan, I go home. On show day, I turn up looking exactly the same. And I've even had people say to me when I've then got all my makeup and my hair and everything done, bloody hell, you look different. And because for me, you're preserving yourself throughout the whole of peak week. The night before, in the morning, hold it together, internalize, you know, nourish those moments of thinking, how have I got to this point? What have I done to get to this point? And then when you get on that stage, it's on.
Yeah, totally. And I think as well, like there's a kind of a message in what you just said there, and I do a similar sort of thing. It's the peak week has got a certain because you're almost forced to relax because you have to allow the food to do what it needs to do, and you've stopped training however many days out, or depending on the coach and what class it is, you've stopped doing what you need to do. But there is then that period of calm before the storm, if you like, and that's where I use visualization as well, similar to what you just said. And Andrew does this with me a couple of days out, the night before the show, where I'll close my eyes and I'll do a lot of breathing techniques, and he will just internalize my visualization. So he'll just say things like, you're going to wake up tomorrow, you're going to be really calm, you're going to enjoy your food, you're going to have your makeup put on, and you're going to really enjoy that feeling of just pulling this whole package together. And you're going to feel kind of that energy getting to the venue, seeing people you know, you're going to take in that energy. You're going to be preparing yourself backstage, and then he'll go through the whole process right up to the point where, and now you've stepped out on stage. And just doing that visualization the night before, for me, in a really calm, meditative state with somebody who of course I love and supports me with what I do, is hugely powerful because it sets you up the next morning and you're just like, I know what I've got to do. And it's great.
It just feels so nice. And like you could see we were both smiling so much there, because even just thinking of how you feel, you can't put words to it.
No, you can't. And it's such a cathartic thing getting through the whole of a prep to that final week. And it's so emotional. Like even me speaking about it now, like I can feel really emotional about it. If I think to my most recent prep, which was 2019, and that was for a really big show. And I'd been through a couple of tough years before that, and I didn't actually know if I was going to be able to take my physique and bring it to the level I wanted to bring it to for that point.
Yeah.
And for me, that one was like all these little things that we're talking about now almost seemed even more important to me to keep myself calm and level-headed and remind yourself kind of internally, I've got this. I've done all this hard work. This is the week to kind of go, let's put the cherry on the cake and
Yeah.
let's have some fun with it. And
Yeah.
it's a hugely emotional process for you, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely I've had various different feelings towards different shows and what they've meant to me, but it all boils down to that internal gratification that you've got there and now it's your time to shine.
Yeah.
And I've said before on the pods, those show days where I've gone into the show and put so much pressure on myself to get a result that I maybe wasn't ready to get, it took away from what I'd achieved to get to show day itself.
Exactly.
And like we said last week, we would touch on a bit of the social media stuff, and I guess that's probably a good time to talk about that now as to how that can affect Peak Week.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it's real, like real. I got in my most
Look.
in my most successful season in 2019, the week of the first show that I was my first ever show that I won, up until 3 or 4 days before, literally you could not have brought me down. I was so happy with how I looked, how the prep had gone, everything. The good vibes were fully on point. And one day I was just looking at my phone, obviously on Instagram, and I was scrolling through and I saw someone that doesn't even compete with the same federation as me. And I thought, well, I don't look like her.
Yeah.
I don't look good enough. And so for 24 hours, I literally, it was like you could have thrown me in a black hole and covered it over. I could not get myself out of it. And then I spoke with Stephen and one of my close friends and brought myself through and decided actually I would have a few days off social media. But I guess that mind warp that you're in and then seeing other people's physiques and maybe feeling like you don't match up to that, or, it just completely can blow your mind.
Yeah, you're in a almost like heightened state because you're about to get to the finish line, so to speak. So, and it's a cheesy sort of thing to say, the whole you can only control what you can control, but my God, that's the truth. Like, if you've done all the hard work and you've got to that final point, you have to do everything to protect that mindset. You've built habits, strong determination and focus, and all these insanely amazing attributes that most people can't do to get there.
Yeah.
And if you then, in those final moments where there is a bit of fragility because you're nervous, you're thinking, okay, the finish line is there and everybody is going to be there and who's going to be on my competition. And
Yeah.
I would come back to that again. It is a competition. You suddenly realize that. You're like, okay, here we go. Like, there's other people going to be there that I'm up against. And there is that natural instinct to just, grab the phone and start to kind of, oh, I'll just see if anyone's going to be there, maybe in my class. Or, I mean, I've had conversations even with my clients in a few weeks just prior to the shows where they'll be like, oh, have you seen so and so who's doing the class at my show? And I'll say the same to you right now, which is what I say to them, which is, what are you looking at it for? Doesn't matter, because everybody shows their best angle on social media. The 50th picture they've taken in the perfect lighting with the this and the that. And you have to remember as well, like, one picture of one person on a social media post, until you see somebody in a lineup, it's irrelevant, because I have seen people who I've thought look the bomb on Instagram, like literally insane, stand in a lineup and be completely and utterly washed out by other competitors.
Yep.
And it happens all the time. You never know who's going to turn up on the day, and you can't pitch your worth and your potential competitiveness based on this stuff here. It's just not.
And we'll talk about when we do our next pod on show day, like what that can also bring the pressure on the actual day. But in that week, you almost want to just, like we say, float through it, almost
Float through it.
enjoy it.
Limit the kind of time you're spending on socials, and if it is, do it for more of a reason for your own confidence. Like I've got a lot of saved items on my Instagram for confidence.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of the things that help me is just by browsing through posts or quotes or things like that kind of just remind you that thoughts become, I think I've said this before, thoughts become things. If you think something enough, if you believe something enough, you will become it. You will be like that. And if you believe that you've done everything you possibly can and you're worth every right to stand on that stage and do your thing, you'll go out there feeling very positive about that.
And remembering your why, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it in the first place?
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into a prep, and it's unbelievable. I had someone once say to me when I didn't place in my first few seasons, a friend of mine, he actually got me into competing in the first place because he sowed the seed of, you could do that. And then suddenly I did it. And when I spoke to him and I said I didn't place and hadn't seen him for a while, and he was like, but you won. And I was like, what? And he was like, do you know how many people don't even survive a prep?
Yeah, they can't even get through the first quarter of it. Yeah.
That had never even entered my mind, Steph. I was like, what do you mean people don't survive the prep? And he was like, it's phenomenal the amount of people that do not even get through the prep. Or, something really bad happens, they might have a family member, something go wrong, or their work changes, their situation changes. Some people they might even get all the way to a week out and they don't even get to do the peak week and that last bit because something bad has happened, or they just can't handle it, or whatever it is. And it took me back and gave me a moment of clarity that actually I'm doing this for me, and so much has gone into that prep. I'm going to enjoy the peak week and the show, and what will be.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. Say, 80% of people start out on a prep, 20% of them follow it through.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a real kind of, it says a hell of a lot about a person who can complete a prep and get on stage, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah. I think one of the things I always used to feel when I thought of it along those lines was that, I guess, because prep is, for me, it's almost like a privilege that I get to do it for a start. And because it's a choice, and in essence, I guess I used to think, oh, well, I'm not really doing anything. All I'm doing is into my macros and my training, if that makes sense. And that was probably, I guess, my own self-doubt and whatever else that contributed to that. But I used to think, why would you not do it? I feel privileged. It's a choice. I'm really, I'm enjoying it. I'm seeing my body change. I'm benefiting from this mentally and physically. And then you have to step back and go, this isn't a normal thing for you to do. This, even from the caveman era, their whole life was hunting food, eating food, hunting food, and our instincts are to eat and to satiate and to look after ourselves. And when you're battling against that for potentially 6 months, maybe even more, that is quite a big achievement. And it's like, but I can't call it an achievement because all I'm doing is not eat, And there's that sort of mind warp as to, have I done enough to achieve this? And then you look back and you go, yes, I have, because you realize as preps go on, hopefully people come through that mind warp that we've both potentially had, where it's like, actually, I am good at this. I'm pouring a lot of energy into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you deserve the recognition for yourself. It's not necessarily that you need everyone going, gosh, she's so good, she's amazing, this, that, and the other. It's like, oh wow, I have done quite well here.
Yeah.
you know, you go into your peak week and you hopefully you can bring those positive vibes through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's, you know, this is why kind of when you draw it back to peak week, it's the peak week is a chance for you to kind of reflect on that journey to that point. Because I'll never forget, I think it was 2017 is the first time after quite a few of my preps that I'd seen my body realistically in a peak week. And I remember getting up, I think it was just after my deplete, and it was kind of day one of my carb loading. And I stood in the mirror it was in a hotel, it was in Miami because I was doing the international show. And I just looked at my body, and it's weird because even though I do this, and I don't know how you feel about this, Sarah, but I don't like really taking myself in sometimes. Like I'm not, and it's not because I have an issue with my body. I love my body, you know, and I love challenging it. But I never, bizarrely, ever kind of stop and look at my physique and think, look at my muscle, or look at what I've achieved here, or look at my shape, or look at this. And I think it was that, I remember it so clearly because it was almost like a pin drop moment where I actually felt for the first time that I'd finally achieved the look I'd been really hoping to challenge myself to get by that point.
Yeah.
And I was just totally like, I totally broke down. I remember it because I was like, fuck, I don't even care what happens on the stage.
Yes.
This right here, me, myself, and I've achieved so much. And it was such a great feeling because I just realized, like, with such hard work and all the different things that kind of drove me to that point, that if you don't love it and you don't actually, you know, see the benefit or see the kind of the success in that itself, you'll never get fulfillment from a trophy or anything else.
No, you can hear it in your voice, like the way you come across there when you're describing it, and those moments no one can ever take away from you.
No way.
And it's so like, there's even, I don't know about you, but there's like certain songs that I've had in
your cardio prep songs.
And they come on my shuffle and I'm like, and it's it's almost like it sort of hits you and you think, I can't believe how many preps I've done now and where I'm at now and where I'm excited, you know, to go further in this sport and to continue doing that. And I guess sort of what we do coming together, we've both got to that point where we're able to now share those things.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's so good. You know, we were talking before we hit record about people starting to message us saying, we've listened to your videos and we're finding a lot of inspiration in the way you guys come across and how you're trying to get information out there for, it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or you've prepped several times. All this is relatable.
So relatable and so relevant, you know. There's just, this stuff is like, it wasn't around at all. And so now to be able to even share, I think for me feels like I'm giving back to the sport, if you like, that it's given me so much. And it's great. And so I mean, I think you do. I think there's like all of these things when you come to the peak week, they are amplified, and then it becomes a whole like, wow, okay, I'm here, let's do this. And the excitement of the peak week, because it's different, it gives you kind of a little lease of like life, doesn't it? To kind of, oh, how exciting, I'm here, what do I get to do that's different?
And I with peak week as well, there's a couple of things that I quite like to do before peak week so that I can then go into the show feeling really confident. And that's if you're competing, obviously internationally it's more difficult, but if I can, I'll actually go and visit the hotel I'm going to stay at the night before the show. So in my prep, you know, maybe a couple of months before, Kieran and I'll book a stay and we'll go there for a couple of nights. I'll go and look at the venue if I can. So it's normally like a theatre or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've had several of those where I've been able to, during my prep, go and have a stay over, go and actually look at the venue. And then exactly what you said about visualization, I walk in and I look and I think, I'm going to be on that stage. I can see where the chairs are. And I start to build up what that might look like. And also when you go and get your tan, it's quite often at the venue, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having a sneak around. And, you know, I've even gone on the stage and I thought, well, no one's around. And I've gone on the stage and almost not done my full eye walk, but, you know, pretended. And yeah. Because there's so many little things like that. All that visualization and feeling comfortable with being on that stage, understanding where everything is, where the toilets are, all of those little things. It's a really cool way to sort of, it's almost like you feel like you've got the upper hand.
I know. No, I think I absolutely agree. I think it's a great idea. And if you've got the means to do that, it's perfect. It's rehearsal, isn't it? It's rehearsing the day through your mind and being there, seeing and feeling the place, feeling the space of the place, getting a feel for the whole thing. And I think if you've got the opportunity to do it, it's such a great idea. It's such a great idea.
I guess as well, another thing that sort of ties in with that is knowing how long it's going to take you to travel there. So a lot of the places so for me, like one of my shows was in York, which was on Google Maps, it was 4 hours from here. It took 9 hours. You know, so there was that, like, I know the drill now and I know that might happen, but when you're, you know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like we say, when you're in your peak week and you're thinking, right, I'm going to travel up late the night before, or, you know, you might leave it to the last minute, which is something that I would say try not to. If you can, you know, go up a day before, a couple of days before, if you've got
cannot recommend that enough.
Yeah. And that is, like, for me, that is a massive golden nugget, which I wish that I knew.
Yeah.
Because if you can't, you know, I always think, yes, okay, you're going to need to pay for a hotel maybe for a couple of nights before and things like that. But for me, I can't put a price on how it feels to get settled a couple of nights before.
It's like you've done all this work for months on end and then you rush around at the last minute. Don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. Pay the 50 quid for a hotel room, or just
honestly, please.
Go with a friend, anything.
If you take one thing from this video, it's
don't travel on the day unless it's literally the venue is 2 minutes from your house, right? It's just save yourself the stress. You know, I have a routine now as well, similar to you, in sort of I've done my peak week, and maybe, you know, towards the end of the peak week I'll go and stay wherever I'm staying, and feet's up, I'm chilled. It's always in an apartment, usually one of these kind of like apart hotels, you know, the ones which have got your kitchen, etc., and all of that, so you can make sure you've got prepared food, etc. I know we can speak about this on the show day one, which I think we will. A lot of people will get their show hair or makeup done by the federation's own people. I don't do that. I have my own person come and do it, come to me, and it sounds very diva-esque, but I don't move from my space in the morning. The only time I want to exert my energy is to go to the venue. I want to have my hair done in peace, my makeup done in peace, the whole thing. Because I see a lot of girls, and I've seen this happen before, where you're rushing around to your tanner, to your makeup artist over here, and they're running around like headless chickens. And it's just, I've got like a few staple hair and makeup artists actually across the UK now, that if I know where I'm going, I call on them.
I feel you.
It's just, it's like, they're great. I know they do me really well, and I absolutely love that me time.
It's definitely those things that you learn as you go, because my first show, I just sort of, I didn't really, the website didn't give me much indication as to how to get prices and all that, and I didn't really know what to do. Whereas now, in my prep, it's almost like every week I want little things that are going to contribute to show day. So however many weeks before, however far in advance, if you can get these things booked, do it. So get your tan booked, understand where the location is. If you can, book your hair, or do what you do, you know, you've got someone that you can book, get your time slot in, your makeup, all of those things. If you can book that 6 weeks before,
well in
why
advance.
not? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because
This
it's
is what I
stress out.
totally. And like this is something that I was really passionate about, like when I first set up Pro Prep, because one of the elements of like my coaching, and I've got on my board here right now my teams for the shows. I go with my guys. I get apartments for us all. I get a resident makeup artist. I get hair artists, and they come to us, and I've got everyone in the one place.
Yeah.
We do it. They are calm. I know they're collected. I can see their conditioning. I can see that their tan's okay. They enjoy the experience, and for me, I wanted to give this experience where they were together, like-minded, and enjoying that process without the solo kind of the thing of it, you know, like actually that final end where they can be together and then go and do something and feel completely catered for. And that was kind of the whole, like, again, the next level of that kind of
experience
and that professional output of wanting to right to the final moment, like have everything just perfect,
as controlled as possible. Because
yeah.
it's even, you touched on there about apartments. That's a really good way to look at it, if you can get like a little kitchenette and things like that.
Great.
If you're staying in hotels, I've actually got a travel microwave.
Yeah.
You know, I've got all my stuff. And also in peak week, I give myself little jobs. I call them jobs because I quite like to stay productive as much as I can, but minimal stress. So,
Yeah.
you know, like the day before you're going to leave to hopefully go to a hotel and an apartment, it's a case of, could you get together your food prep that you need? At the start of peak week, it might be that, depending on it, you know, for me, flexible dieting, I would make my food plan for peak week.
Yeah.
If you've got a coach like yourself who caters for all of that, can you print the food plan out? Can you look at it? Can you understand it? Can you make sure you've got all the foods in?
Yeah.
And also surrounding yourself with people that understand what you're doing and that are supportive and are not going to go, oh, well, you can have this now, can't you? Or you can have, oh, after the show, let's go and smash all the food. Because, you know, like you say, if you can all come in as athletes, if you're in that group environment of athletes, you haven't got the pressure of that type of stuff.
Totally. And you just, you know, I took my guys down to the shows at the end of last year after kind of the lockdown experience, and luckily the show fell just between the time we were out of lockdown and then going back in for December. And yeah, it was crazy, but we managed to go down and do the whole thing together, which was amazing. But when I was watching them, and I could see the communication they were having together as athletes, and a lot of them first timers, and just the kind of the camaraderie spirit, but also the, oh, have you got a hairbrush I can borrow? Or, oh, can I just, like, you know, those kind of little things that you just,
so good.
And it was just so great to see them sort of just totally feel comfortable, but part of it, part of something, because not everybody maybe is going to walk away with a trophy.
Yeah.
So what other experiences can you really make sure you have around that day that are going to make this enjoyable for you?
Yeah.
And like those kind of things really matter to me. So in the peak week, if there are things you can do, like to maximize the experience, to do it. I mean, I give my guys a show day checklist that they can get all like giddy about through the week to make sure that they're ticking off their show day checklist, you know, making sure that their skin is ready, their preparation and exfoliation for skin. We can talk about that. That's probably a good one.
Yeah. Because that's definitely that was on my agenda of things we should cover, because again, it's something that I knew nothing about. And with Stephen being a male coach, I remember a phone call with him once, and I said, you know, it says on my peak week plan to exfoliate every day. What do you mean? Do you mean with gloves? Do you mean with like a salt scrub? Do you mean, how does that look? And he was like, just exfoliate. And I'm like, and
I'm a female. What does that mean?
yeah, and you'll get me when I say it gets to that point where you're like, I am doing everything possible to make this 110%. I do not want anything going wrong that's down to me not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And then he put it in sort of layman's terms as it was, and I can understand. But it's even that exfoliation, you know, peak week in particular, it's exfoliating on throughout that week, but then you moisturize for the first normally 5 days, isn't it? And then you have 2 days away from things like antiperspirant spray and various things that you need to consider with having the tan put on.
Yeah.
What's really good now, I don't know if you've noticed, but most of the tanning companies send you a guide to what to do.
They'll give you like a skin prep instruction sort of thing. Like there is a, like, again, it kind of comes back. It's like peak week. Loads of people do the nutritional side differently. A lot of people do the skin prep or that kind of prep differently as well. And I think you're absolutely right. It's about that kind of making sure you've exfoliated at least a month out of your contest prep. Your contest peak week, and you have been maybe doing 2 times a week, then up that to 3 times a week. And then when it comes to peak week, you're dropping back the exfoliation a little bit, but you're moisturizing until 2 days out. And that 2 days, you're making sure that you're not clogging the pores with anything, no antiperspirants, no, any kind of creams or whatever. You're just, you want to use also like a pH balanced skin care system. But
that's what I learned as well.
Totally. Something with no parabens, no sulfites, nothing in it. Sanix is the golden goose, in my opinion. Sanix is a really good, like, zero paraben free, non-fragranced, as basic and boring a thing you can get, but it's like, but it does the trick.
Once I was trying to find a pH balance one, and I was thinking, I never even heard of this. And I went round Chichester, which is not far from me, and I went in like every shop, and the assistants in the shops were looking at me thinking, what is this woman on about? She's it for a fake stat. And I'm like, I'm trying to say I'm a bodybuilder, and I'm, you feel a bit uncomfortable because, and then they look at you like, what? You're not a bodybuilder. You haven't got any muscles. It's like that whole thing, like, what is she on about? And I'm like, I just want a pH balance.
Just give me some pH balance stuff.
Is that okay? And then it becomes this like, and now I know I can get stuff like that. You've got like compact women that do they've got like the exfoliator and lots of different things, and you can pretty much set yourself up through the different companies now, which it makes it so much easier. But like you say, we sound like dinosaurs, but when we first started competing, none of this was like public knowledge. It was like cloak and dagger.
Oh my God, for God's sake, like my first show, I'll give you a laugh, right? My first show, it was like, right, shave or wax a couple of days before, and then they slapped a ton of Dream Tan. Have you ever used Dream Tan?
No.
Okay, this makes me even more of a dinosaur. And if we do get the judge we're talking about on, he'll know what I mean about this. However, Dream Tan, for those of you who have used it, will know what I mean. Dream Tan isn't like a tan. It's like slick, like putty that you basically pat on you, and anything it touches, like my new Brandon Coke Zero here, anything it touches, it would smudge off, so it wouldn't go on your skin and dry. It was like glaze. That's why it was called Dream Tan. It was like dreamy, soft cream
like clouds,
like cream on your skin. And if you type into Google right now, bodybuilder with Dream Tan on, you'll see what I mean. They're like golden statues of cream. That's what it looks like. And it got everywhere. It was on the walls, it was on the seats, it was on the stage, it was everywhere. And that was my very first experience of tanning. And honestly, all you would hear when you walked into the backstage was like hundreds of people. It was awful. And now they've banned Dream Tan. Surprise, surprise.
There's so many different, like, there's so many stories when you've done it and you've come through the ages, as it were, which makes us sound even older. But it is definitely now like this. It would be harder to go wrong, and
it'd be much harder because first of all, there's a lot of tans to choose from, and secondly, they are very up on, like, you've got your base coat, they've got a plan for you putting it on, they give you instructions on when to put it on, when to put your top coat on, how to apply it, you've got the stuff that you need. Or if even better, the majority of federations now have the tanners there. You go, just get sprayed, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's those types of things it's definitely worth inquiring about. So I'd say inquire about tan, hair, makeup, depending on how you're going to do it. Book those in.
Do you have a go-to tanner? Like, do you have a tan that you really like?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say Black Magic was my favorite. Yeah, most of them are okay. I've had LSR's good.
Yeah, you've done Liquid Sunrays.
Yeah, and she's really nice. She's so cool. Like when I did Rhino, she was there, and it's a really dark tan compared to what I'm used to. And I was
that Steph from Liquid Sunrays?
Lee's.
Or was it Lee's? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm trying to qualify for Mexico, and she was like, oh, and I was like, I could be having my tan in Mexico. And then we had this like moment of talking about how that would be having a tan in a hot country and how nice that would be, because it was November and it was Baltic, and I'm there, and as I was having the tan, freezing, I was dreaming of being in Mexico having the tan. And that was a darker tan.
Yeah.
But actually, I did quite like that. Black Magic is slightly lighter, but I also like that. They were both really nice, even tan. Both gave that look that I wanted. Is there a certain company you use?
I use my absolute go-to is A1 Tan, which is Nicola Gilbert's brand of it, but it's quite well popular in the UK. But it's actually a blend of Black Magic and their own solution. It's amazing. And I would say that out of all the tans I've ever used, it just went on like a dream. The thing is tanning is so specific to your kind of skin and how it takes. Like, and also then what a lot of people don't realize is the tan is dark for a purpose because of the show lights. And over the years, I've been really picky about tans. Like I want it dark enough, but not too dark. I don't want it grainy. I don't want it green. I don't want it matted. I don't want it too dewy. Like I'm really like specific about it, but I can't recommend them enough. A1 Tan.
Yeah. And also, I guess you touched on there about hair removal. Yeah. I had a girl on Instagram that I speak to. She's actually doing some work with mental health awareness and things like that. And I was going to take part in like a workout relay she was organizing. And I said to all of them, has anyone got any questions from me and my posing coach, Steph? We're doing this YouTube video every couple of weeks, and we're trying to sort of air any concerns or questions people have. And she said, epilate, wax, or shave. And it was like, oh, that's quite a good question, because that's something that I personally thought, I want to get this right. I don't want to risk anything going wrong with my tan and what have you. So I would personally, I wax everywhere, probably 3 days before. How do you?
So I don't wax everything. I wax bikini line, obviously, and I then do VEET on my legs, my back, my arms, and any other little bits and pieces. But I only bikini wax because, and this is only, there is only a lot of people I know wax. I have ridiculously sensitive skin, so sensitive, and for me the waxing is too harsh for me. It leaves me too open to like just dryness, and I've tried that. So for me the VEET's a little bit kinder and softer to my skin, but removes all the hair for the enough of a duration of time that I need it for. So if I did it like 40 to 72 hours before, and I get rid of it all, and then if I need to, which is very rare, I'll quickly nip over a razor on little bits if I need to. But the one area for waxing, girls, has to be below. You're wearing next to nothing. Get that wax.
and doing it that, say, up to 3 days before, it just allows the skin to calm down and to ensure that when you get your tan, it doesn't end up having markings or various other things. Also, you can then moisturize the areas before you have to cut that out.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, exactly. But it's good that we've both got a slightly different approach to that, because because they both work really well. It's just a case of getting yourself into a routine that's going to be easy for you and kind to your skin, and then you know that the tan is going to take well after it as well.
Yeah. And because I guess a top tip here would be, again, like everything, if you can practice it,
Do
why
it. Oh yeah, I would.
yeah.
If you've got a few weeks at your show, do
Yeah.
a skin routine. Like do this.
See what
Literally.
happens.
Like, mhm,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to find, like, for example, like I use the very sensitive skin V, works for me a treat, but some people are really sensitive to that as well, so you need to be really careful. Waxing, you might find that it's easy peasy. Like if you're an avid waxer and somebody who's getting it done, your skin and your body will have built up a bit of a resistance to that, so you're probably going to find that easier. Whereas if you're somebody who doesn't wax at all, then suddenly goes and gets their whole body waxed, you might find that it's like
Too harsh.
oh
Yeah, it's literally everything that you do on peak week. If you can practice it before, literally practice it.
Yeah.
It's like your posing practice, isn't it? Like we've said, when you go into prep, if you can, I know we said about cardio setup might negate this slightly, but if you can pose in practice every day, and that continues through peak week, but it might be that, for me, if I'm traveling those 4 to 9 hours to York, it might be the day before I go, actually, I'm going to have a rest from this and come in fresh for show day. But do you get your clients to keep posing every day throughout peak week, or is there a slight change?
I do posing on the deplete days. So I usually do, and again, it depends on the class. Everyone's a wee bit different, but it's usually posing on depletion. And then when we're loading, I might pose on the first 2 days of load, and then I'll stop.
Yeah. Just to give you.
And the duration will change as well. Yeah. So it just really, really depends. But the posing usually stops one day after carb loading.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, if you've got the confidence that you've posed how you should be, how your posing coach tells you, then actually you can go, well, I'm okay with having a couple of days off. It's probably just going to be, things like progress photos, and that's almost, if one of your athletes is sending you photos, they're going to probably hit the poses, and it's almost like a mini practice, but not with the intention of doing like a full routine.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the majority of time, I get to all my clients' shows, so I'm there to look at them the night before, at least on the day. But if it's not going to be via photo, I usually get my guys to like video call me, and we'll go through how they're looking, and I'll check. I'll get them to stand like super close to the camera and look at like how their subcutaneous water is between their skin and their muscle and all of that, just to make sure that they are on point. Because sometimes they check in photos and videos can be difficult to see that kind of hard. If I need somebody to be conditioned, I and this is another reason why I'm like, I try and get to all my shows, because
oh yeah, you can't beat those real life condition checks. It's when I've had the opportunity for that, it's so good, and it makes you feel so happy that you've got your coach there.
Oh, it's just such a relief, because you do just get that instant feedback, like, yep, you're on point, or you need more rice cakes, or you need more carbs, or you need some more salt, or you need to lay off the carbs.
I always say Callow should have shares in bodybuilding.
Yeah,
like never been
should
too
have
low.
shares. Yeah, totally.
Like even when I competed last year in Corona, and there was, the amount of athletes was probably a quarter of what there would be at a normal show. There was still rice cakes.
yeah, exactly.
It's just crazy.
And roughly sort of how your deplete, like what your carbohydrates look like in your deplete in relation to your loads, for an example.
So my last one, I went from, I just over double, so probably times 2.5 of my normal carbs. And then so the intention was to do 3 days at 400 carbs on my and then bring it down the night before, but actually I filled out fairly quickly this time, and I was holding a bit of water from, I think, probably the travel and stuff, because it is in Portugal. So actually we went 400 carbs, and then we went to 2 days of 300.
Yeah, just to drop off a bit.
Yeah, and that's where those check-in and the condition checks come in, because you just don't know until you take on you're thinking, 3 days of 400 carbs, and then it was like, no, actually you don't need that many, let's tighten it down a bit. And
yeah, totally. Yeah,
with
I mean,
experience,
it is exactly that. Like, I think that's a good way of doing it, sort of like taking them in and then tapering them off. If I was doing, like, to give you an example of a deplete with myself, like
bigger.
a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday deplete would be like, no joke, I would take my carbs right down to like 60 grams, 40 grams, 40 grams, to the point where I am just total deplete. And that will shoot up over the Monday to about 500.
Isn't that
not on the Monday, on the Thursday, 500, 518 grams. The Thursday it might be 400. The Friday it might be 300. Look at me, am I full enough? Then we go in it, and that's how it would look. But then
there's your difference in categories.
Different categories, but then there's like, you've got to remember, like, and this is guys where I also say, like, this is where coach comes in really handy, because when you're playing around with carbohydrate, you have to understand the water balance.
What are you trying to do?
You need to understand like how much water you're taking in, when that water is coming out, and when you're obviously considering anything else that you're doing to manipulate your sodium and keeping the body really tight. So it's a science. You're going to need help with that.
Yeah, and that's where, like, we always say, having a coach for that amount of time and building that trust, it will pay dividends, because like we've said before, you almost want your coach to be that god that you can go, if they're saying that's what I should do, that's what I should do.
That's what I should do. Yeah, and it just, again, it takes the stress off, doesn't it? It just totally takes the stress off. So yeah,
I guess to wrap up, should we both give our favorite golden nugget for a peak week?
Yeah. I was going to say as well, like, what's one of the worst things that have happened in peak week for you, or something that you really remember being like, oh my God, have you got any moments like that?
I think probably that travel up to York, and it being like 9.5 hours in the car.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, I had like a pivotal moment where if that had been any other prep that I'd done before that, and I'd done probably 5, preps and peak weeks before that, I would have been losing my absolute shit. And I'd be so stressed, it would just take away from everything. But actually, a song came on the radio, Pump It Up, and me, my mum, my stepdad, we're going, and we were just, and it was absolutely pissing it down, and it couldn't go much worse, but we found a way to make it better, and we always reminisce about certain stuff like that. And I guess that's what I took from doing so many, that I could have just gone completely negative. I had all my food, we were sat in traffic, but there's nothing we could do. So that was definitely a take home for me.
Yeah, totally. It's funny actually, because like mine would totally be travel related as well, but this actually happened to me. It's not so much of a peak week thing. It was more of it was just prep brain. But we left the house to go travel down the day before to our accommodation, and like you, instead we were going from Leeds to, like, oh my God, it was somewhere in the south. It was really, really far down in the south. Can't even remember. Leatherhead.
Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
So, and it was like miles away, right? It was literally forever. Anyway, we're halfway down, and I'm like, oh, I'll just have my next meal. Turned into the car, and I was like, fuck, I left my entire prep bag with all of my meals, all of my food. And that is the only time I've done anything that ridiculous. That was early on in my prep as well. And I remember just turning and saying, I've not got my food with me. Just like, like that kind of like, oh my God moment. And
I don't know what to do.
So 4 hours back, get the food, all the way back down again. Ridiculous. Because it wasn't like I could even just wing it, because I had everything in there. Like I had everything that I needed, and it was like it was more stress to go down and try and figure it all out than it was to like, because even my scales were in it and everything else, and I was like, this is just a disaster. So so that was a travel faux pas, but like a golden nugget. Let's leave on a golden nugget, not a bad thing.
That would be my massive golden nugget, would be to, what I love doing is making like I get a bit of A4 card and I do like show day, location, postcode. I do my tan time, my macros, all of those things, and I have it on a laminated A4 bit of card, and that's like my favorite thing during peak week, to create that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's a great little idea. What would my golden nugget be? I think we've covered most of them. I think
don't forget your bag of prepped food.
Be prepared, have a show day checklist, and visualize. I think those are my three main. There's a lot of other little things, like you know, you really want your coach to be a big part of that point in your premise, in your process as well, because it's just that's where you're gonna need the support the most, I think. So that's another thing. Just lean on your coach at that point. No question's the wrong question, and let the magic happen.
Cool. Well, that was awesome, just talking through that, because there's so many moments of reminiscing as well, isn't there?
Oh yeah, there was. Yeah, it was really good, and lots of great stuff to take away as usual.
Yeah, so we will do our normal upload on our YouTubes, and if anyone wants to reach out, then I'm Sarah Parker Hatchard on Instagram. Yep, hit me up. It's been really cool to have some messages coming through. And we just appreciate you guys listening and giving us the opportunity to ramble and share our experiences. For sure. And the same thing, drop me a comment, drop me a message. I love speaking to you all on there. Steph_Noble Figure Pro or Pro Prep Coaching. And as always, comments on the YouTube videos are really helpful for us to know what you guys want to hear about. So any questions. And we will look forward to next time, where we will be hitting up with a show day podcast. So show day. So we've done the peak. Gonna be good. What to expect when you walk through those doors. Yes. Cool. And I'm sure we'll have lots of experiences to share. Absolutely. Many. Yes. Cool. Awesome to chat to you, Steph. As always. See you later. Bye.